Well, here is our first in-depth report. The Indian government weathered a vote of confidence in Parliament on Tuesday. It ensures the immediate survival of the ruling coalition and a civilian nuclear deal with the United States. But it's hardly cause for the ruling Congress party to feel overly confident. The trust vote has dramatically rearranged old political alliances and sharpened the divide between adversaries. Meantime, the troubled nuclear deal, hailed as a centerpiece of deepening friendship with the US, is not yet done.
A major victory for Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. The government won 275 votes against 256 for the opposition, with 11 members abstaining. The narrow win means the four-year-old government will, for the moment, stay in power.
Very grateful to the honourable members of Parliament for having given us such a convincing victory.
The significance of the vote goes well beyond the survival of Singh's administration. It also paves the way for the one policy issue on which he has staked his legacy, a civilian nuclear deal initiated by the Bush administration 2 years ago. The deal would allow India access to nuclear fuel and technology on the world market. It makes India a de facto nuclear power despite not signing the Non-Proliferation Treaty. On July the 8th, Manmohan Singh met George W. Bush at the G8 meeting in Japan. The two agreed to press ahead with the deal. But the nuclear deal has drawn fire at home. The very next day, the government's communist allies formally withdrew their support for the four-year-old coalition in protest.
Drawing support from the UPA government.
Singh had no choice but to call the vote of confidence. On Tuesday, the opposition Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP, added to the anger and chaos in the lower house of Parliament.
Here with the implementation of the nuke deal, the lobbyists, both Indian and international, the nuclear power plants, the companies, and all those who are sure of earning profits with this deal are all set to snatch away the sovereignty of this nation.
A Chinese analyst explains the objections.
India has a long cherished tradition in its foreign policy to remain master of its own fate. But Washington would prefer India to be a compliant ally that falls in line with its policies. So the left parties criticize the nuclear deal with the U.S. as making India subservient to Washington.
While the BJP and communists allege that the deal would make New Delhi a pawn of Washington, the ruling Congress-led United Progressive Alliance has snapped back.
So, this problem of energy security reflects itself every day with all of us. It reflects itself among the poor, in the house of Sasikala. It reflects itself with industry.
The government has argued that India, which imports 75% of its oil, needs the deal to power its energy-hungry economy. Inflation shot above 11% in early June to a 13-year high, following a rise in state-set fuel prices. With the economy weakening, dissatisfaction is spreading among ordinary Indians.
As a housewife also, yes, it is affecting me, especially us because fuel prices are rising, LPG prices are rising, so the whole budget has gone upside down and all of a sudden it's very difficult to manage. The government should think something about it.
We need more and more electric power, more and more power for our farms, for our farmers, for our factories, for our schools, for our hospitals, for our homes, for every single house in every single village of our country.
The nuclear deal could unlock $40 billion in investment over the next 15 years as India seeks new energy sources to tap its economy.
Let's stay with this story. For Singh's coalition, the controversial deal may yet open a door to advanced nuclear fuel and technology, but his opponents charge that it will force New Delhi to give up its independent foreign policy, a legacy that can't be countered by dollars alone.
Historically, India and the US have never been close. As a founding member of the non-aligned movement, India would not be drawn into taking sides on the Cold War. In 1998, India tested Washington when it and regional rival Pakistan both tested nuclear weapons. The US retaliated with tough sanctions on both countries. But decades later, the nuclear deal reverses US policy opposing nuclear cooperation with India.
The U.S. needs India to carry out its strategy in South Asia. India needs the U.S. to smooth its rise as a major power. The nuclear deal will further enhance the Indo-U.S. relationship.
A U.S. critic says the deal would also affect the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty.
It creates more of a double standard in the non-proliferation regime, and other countries will look to this example and say, well, why not us?
India has set the ball rolling, having sent a draft of its nuclear safeguard accord to the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna. But there's the question of time. The deal still needs clearances from the IAEA and the 45-nation Nuclear Suppliers Group. Then the deal would have to go to the US Congress for final approval. The problem may be here on Capitol Hill. In a hard-fought election year, some say there's simply not enough time left to get the accord through both houses of Congress.
In terms of this year, the chances are very unlikely. It's simply a matter, right now, a matter of the time frame for them to actually pass the legislation.
But supporters of the pact say they're still optimistic.
Well, I'm confident it will. I'm confident because I do think both parties recognize the importance to get this done on this particular watch. Now, the congressional calendar is very crowded, and we are aware of that, and we're watching it very carefully.
In India, the real impact of the spat on nuclear deal will be felt in coming months. The major and minor political parties in the deeply fractured political system are preparing for national elections. The current government's term expires in May 2009.
Now, this deal would provide India with much-needed civilian nuclear power, but it would also mean a major shift in the balance of power in South Asia. Meantime, nuclear-armed India is not a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Given the controversy of Iran's nuclear program, it remains to be seen how the major powers will deal with what appears to be a double standard. That's our first story up here on World Insight, but keep watching because we're going to return with thorny issues in the US election.